I know I'm preaching to the choir tonight. Congregation, choir, whatever, you all singing. What is that? And that? Menorahs. You know that the thing we light on Chanukah is not a menorah, right? What's it called? Yeah, that's why I said I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know. Now, the first couple of Chanukas that existed, they didn't even have Chanukiahs. They had in their homes oil lamps, these flat little things, and they put olive oil. Remember, candles weren't invented until like the Middle Ages, and they were considered very luxurious. So typically, some argue even for a Chanukah Menorah, for a Chanukiah, you shouldn't use candles. You should burn olive oil. And we've done that. We actually have an olive oil Chanukiah here. It's messy, but it's cool. And you can just use regular olive oil you buy. The more pure it is, the better, with a little wick. You put it in, and it lights. So on the first night of Chanukah, in ancient times, they would light one oil lamp, and then they would add oil lamps accordingly. But it's not that simple. Nobody should think we're Jews. There's always different opinions. There are some ancient teachings in the Talmud, date back to the origins of when we started to celebrate Hanukkah, again, 2,000 years or so ago. And in the Talmud, it says, the sages taught the basic mitzvah of Hanukkah is that each day you light a light, one person in the house, preferably the head of the house, and that person lights a light on behalf of his entire household. Okay? Now, the really religious people, in the Talmud, it says, kindle a light for each and every person in the household. So if, for example, there are two parents and two kids, on the first night of Hanukkah, you may light 4 lights. So lots of you in the Talmudic era, because you might have many Chanukiahs in the house, you would be considered very religious, all right? Pat yourself on the back for that. Now we've got these two characters in Jewish history. One by the name of Shammai, very well-respected rabbi. He appears in the Talmud. And his ruling was that on the first day of Hanukkah, you start on your Chanukiah, or back then it would have been by lining up oil lamps, with 8 flames. From there on, each night, you reduce the flames, so that on the last night of Hanukkah, you have 1 candle burning. Okay? Now, we'll talk about why in a minute. Then there's Beit Hillel. They were competition, they had their arguments, disagreements, sometimes pretty intense, but they respected each other, and they're side by side for eternity in the Talmud. Hillel says, no. On the first day, one lights 1 candle, and every night you light another candle until the end, you have 8 candles. Now this often, if I teach this to some of our younger kids, they're like, no, well, where's the 9th candle, right? Because the shamash gets confusing, the helper candle, but we're not going to go there tonight. Now, let's look at why Hillel and Shammai say what they say. So Shammai, he's the guy who says that by the last night of Hanukkah, you have 1 flame going. Shammai says, we light 8 candles on the first night because, he argues, the light, and this is the Talmudic language, the light corresponds to the future days of the holiday. On the first day, 8 days remain of Hanukkah. 1 kindles 8 lights. And on the second day, 7 days remain, so we kindle 7 lights, etc. Slowly, the future number of days goes down, and so the candles go down. That's one reason. Now, there's another reason. And this has to do with, if anybody doesn't want me to just destroy the miracle of the oil, close your ears for a minute, because that's not really what happened. And I wrote about it today, so it's a spoiler alert anyway. But it's not what happened on Chanukah. Chanukah was a war victory. It was a rededication. They lit the Chanukiah. They lit the menorah, all of the branches for 8 days, and that was because, not because of some miraculous oil vial, but they got the temple back, and they're like, we need to create a ritual to rededicate this, to purify it. We're going to lift up the menorah, we're going to light it. How long should we do it? And they sat around and they tried to figure it out. Remember, during the Greek time period, they weren't allowed to celebrate any holidays. Illegal. So what was the last holiday? It still applies for us today. What was the last holiday that they weren't allowed to celebrate as they entered this time period? Just think back for us. What was our last holiday? Sukkot. How long does Sukkot last? 8 days. So they said, all right, we couldn't do Sukkot. We're going to make this an 8-day celebration. It's not about oil. The rabbis, and I talked about the rabbis created that later because it was quite dangerous. Some might argue stupid, actually, for a little minority that eventually fell under the control of others to have a war victory where they celebrated their defeat over a huge nation like the Greeks. The rabbis did that to protect the Jewish people. Getting back to Shammai, in the Torah, on Sukkot, there were sacrifices that were performed. 13 bulls were sacrificed on the first day of Sukkot. Now, we don't do that today, so don't worry. But on the second day of Sukkot, you know how many bulls were sacrificed? And the third day? You see? So on Sukkot, and you can read this in Numbers 29, they reduced the number of sacrifices of the bulls. And Shammai wanted to incorporate that into the practice of Hanukkah, so there was a light reduced each night. Now Hillel, he wants to increase the light. And his reason is that the number of lights corresponds to the outgoing days. Each day, the number of lights correspond to the number of the days of Hanukkah that were already observed, including the day we are on, and therefore we add lights. On the first night, we have one, and on the second night, you look at your Chanukiah, you know what night it is of Hanukkah. But the reason for Hillel's opinion is bigger than that. He had a philosophy that's really important. And it's in Talmud too, that we have an obligation as Jews to elevate to a higher level in matters of sanctity and not downgrade as they did on Sukkot with the sacrifices, and as Shammai suggests we do on Hanukkah. We always have an obligation to add more. I'm not trying to be stereotypical here. I'm married to one. I'm the son of one. Jewish mothers. Food. Is there ever not enough food in a Jewish home at a Jewish dinner, right? I always joke that my wife gets enough food to feed an army. But that's part of Judaism. You should have, especially for festive occasions, too much. It's not gluttony, but you have that. And Hillel won the argument. And because of this, we're reminded in our Judaism today, with all things spiritual and sacred and holy, we don't downgrade, we up the game. And in Exodus, it's taught, this is my God, and I will glorify God. And rabbis tried to figure out, again, around 2,000 years ago, what does it mean for us mortals to glorify God? How, the rabbis ask in ancient Midrash, how do we do this? What this really means, they say, is I, all of us, will glorify God in the way I do my Judaism, in the way I perform mitzvot, obligations, traditions. I shall prepare, and this is directly from the Midrash, we're going to expand it. I shall prepare before God a beautiful lulav. The lulav is the thing we shake in the sukkah. You shouldn't get an ugly one. You should have a beautiful one. And I will make a beautiful sukkah. It's okay if you put up a sukkah, but you should make a beautiful sukkah. I shall get a beautiful talit. And it's why when many of us go to Israel, we spend a lot of ridiculous amount of money buying a talit, right? Because it's got to be beautiful. You can make Kiddush over wine in a Dixie cup. I think most of us in this room are old enough to remember what Dixie cups are, right? Or a red Solo cup for those of you who are younger, right? You can. There's nothing wrong with that. But Judaism says that you have the obligation to make the mitzvah beautiful, and therefore the least you should do is take the Dixie cup or the red Solo cup and bedazzle it with jewels. It should be more than it was. We're obligated to add beauty, not accept just a simple object, not just a Dixie cup, and not take away from the beauty either. You shouldn't take a beautiful Kiddush cup, for example, like that Kiddush cup, the dishwasher's full, I'm not gonna empty it, I got no cups, I'm gonna use the Kiddush cup to drink my coffee this morning, right? No, it's not, you're not doing anything awful, but that's supposed to be reserved for a sacred, special moment. Now, Honey Mayer's not here tonight, but she and I had a long conversation on the phone, and she was teaching me about some of her life philosophies. And she was telling me that she was taught by the head of, and it just struck me because it had to do exactly with what I wanted to talk about tonight. She was taught by a head of a major company that he learned a long time ago that there are two types of people in the world. There are red dot people and green dot people. And Honey explained that he actually put in his little notebook of contacts red dots and green dots after people. And red dots and green dots can change. A red dot person, according to this man, they light the Chanukah Menorah. I've added this. This is not what Honey and I talked about, but I've added this. But a red dot person lights the Chanukah Menorah like Shammai, meaning they take away a light each night. These are the glass half empty people, the pessimists. That's the pessimist, right? The glass half empty, right? Because I've just read that and I said, right? These are the people who can't see that tomorrow just might be better. They don't see the potential for improvements. Hope is not necessarily part of their value system. They believe that you got to enjoy it while you can because the light's not going to last. They can be energy sucks. That's what Honey and I were talking about, right? And he would give them a red dot and avoid them at all cost. But sometimes red dot people can become green dot people. Green dot people, they light the Chanukah Menorah like Hillel did. They add a light each night. The glass is half full. They are the optimists. They are the folks who believe that tomorrow is a new day. They live for the potential to grow and improve. Hope is their middle name. They embrace today and they do everything in their power to make tomorrow brighter. These are the positive people in our lives. They boost our energy, the green dot people. And his argument, this guy who Honey learned from, said, you got to surround yourself with green dot people. Now, according to Judaism, the fact that Hillel's view, adding light each night, won out, we Jews should all be green dot people. But we know that this isn't always the case. We know that the followers of Shammai still exist. And at times, we might find ourselves getting dragged down by them. Or at times, we might actually be a red dot person. We might lose our Jewish core and we have a red dot next to our name. But that's why Hanukkah comes around every single year. Because as we light our Chanukiah, we get a moment to check ourselves and ask ourselves, are we failing to light more lights in this world? Are we putting lights out? Are we overlooking wicks that could be ignited by our own hands, but we just either don't see them or don't have the energy or the desire to light them? This isn't the Jewish way. The lesson of Hanukkah, the festival of lights, teaches us to add light to our own lives, to our families' lives, to the world itself. And in our liturgy, we refer to the one who makes light, and that is God. The Torah teaches us at the very beginning that God spoke light into being. Let there be light. And we sing, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, cause a new light to shine on Zion, on the Jewish people, and may we all quickly have the privilege to benefit from this light. God is the maker of light. We are created in God's image, and therefore we too have the incredible potential to be makers of light. We also have the potential to be purely mundane, sometimes even profane, and do nothing to make the world brighter. And lots of us do that. There's lots of red dot people. Honey Mayer says, and I wish she was here tonight, avoid them. But she also told me that through her Shiva experience, she learned that some people who were red dots are actually green dots. And that it's important to pay attention and realize that those stickers shouldn't be permanent, that we can change. I and all of us, we need to be around green dot people. We need those green dots. Each of us needs to find the godliness within us. We need to make the light. We need to embrace Hillel's teaching and add light, not just to each and every single night of Hanukkah, but to all of the days and nights that follow. So keep the lights burning. Don't let them go out. Make Hanukkah and every single night as bright and beautiful as possible. You do that, you earn yourself a green dot next to your name. Shabbat Shalom, and early, happy Hanukkah.